Hey guys, Victor here coming at you again with another discussion video, and today's focus is going to be on how to beat Fire King, which, as you may or may not have noticed, is basically the newest deck in the format, as it's incredibly easy to make, as all you really need are 3 structure decks, and you pretty much have a competitive deck off the get-go. Now, obviously, it can be improved by playing other engines, such as like the Nadir Servant engine or the Dio Bellstar engine, but at the end of the day, the core focus of the deck basically remains the same regardless of what cards you decide to take out. And so hopefully by the end of this video, you're going to be learning a thing or two on how to more easily manage this deck. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the video. Now, when it comes to the end board for Fire Kings, I'm going to be honest, it's pretty straightforward and it's not really going to have that much deviation no matter how many games you play. It's pretty much going to be the same thing the entire time. And as a result, you're pretty much always going to be staring at a Fire King Sanctuary with a Fire King Island. And for those of you that don't know, this pretty much does nothing during your turn except for Fire King Sanctuary, which has two, I guess, pretty important effects. The first one being that if a Fire King spell and trap card you control would be destroyed by, like, card effect or whatever, you can pretty much destroy one Fire King monster from your hand or field. And it's not even just Fire King monster, it's a fire monster. So if you have like an Ash Blossom that you don't need or just anything like that, or a Karakara, for example, you can destroy those to protect your spells and traps, which is pretty useful. But the main effect comes from Fire King Sanctuary being able to exceed summon during your opponent's turn, which gives you access to the rank 8 Garunix, which blows up every other monster on the field except itself. And sometimes I can't end the game. And speaking of cards that blow up other cards, Fire King Skyburn is another card that they might have set face down. And you're going to know if it's set face down because they typically search it, if they don't search like the Fire King Sanctuary. But this deck doesn't really have that many other cards to set. And this card just basically, they destroy their own cards to destroy your cards. It's a Fire King deck. It's what they do. And that's it for the spells and traps. And then for monsters, they're going to try to end on Fire King Avatar Arvada as much as possible, just because it is a monster negate that triggers your Fire King cards because it destroys a fire monster after that. Then you have your Garunix here. This card will either be on the field or in the graveyard to trigger again sometime during the turn, just because, it's pretty good. And if they somehow, for some reason, don't have the Garunix on the field, that typically means they have like a Link monster or something. So if you're not staring down Arvada Garunix, that means you are instead staring down like Arvada plus Heat Soul or Arvada plus IP Masquerena, Little Knight, things of that nature. So that's pretty much all you have to worry about on the field. And then as for these two, these cards are typically going to be added back to the hand during the standby phase of the next turn. Because Ponix will trigger, it's a mandatory effect to add itself back during the next standby phase after it's been destroyed. And then as for Kirin, it will add itself after Barong has been destroyed during the next standby phase. So yeah, that's pretty much all you have to worry about when it comes to the Fire King's like main field, I guess, for the most part. So like I said, it's pretty simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's bad. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about cards that actually help you beat this board or just prevent it from being made in the first place. Now, this deck 100% just crumbles to hand traps. It doesn't matter if it's DD Crow, Skullmeister, Effect Veiler, Imperm. They all hurt it in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like these three are probably the best to help you actually deal with the deck effectively and efficiently. Now, let's talk about Ash Blossom. There's only one card in this deck that's worth ashing, and that's Fire King Island. Just being able to prevent Fire King Island from destroying a card and searching another one is literally game-changing, just because it can straight up end their turn in a lot of situations, as they pretty much rely on the Fire King Island being able to pop a card to be able to actually play the game. So if you stop that, you stop their game. Same thing for Droll and Lockbird. While it is a little bit iffy depending on how they start, a lot of the times if you do just end up drolling them, they straight up can't play the game. These lingering floodgates like Droll probably shouldn't be in the game anymore, especially because they tend to hurt a lot of lower mid-range decks, and unfortunately for Fire Kings, they are one of them. And the same can be said for Dimension Shifter. This is a graveyard deck. It relies on the graveyard. If you don't have a graveyard, you can't play the game. Simple as that. So if you can play any of these three cards to help you deal with Fire Kings, you should be able to play them, and you should be playing them. So with that, let's just go on to the second portion and just talk about good generic cards that can help you deal with this matchup a lot more easily if you don't have the hand traps to be able to deal with it. Now, when it comes to generic good cards to help you deal with this matchup, these three are probably some of my favorites. So as a result, let's start with Cosmic Cyclone. Whether you're going first or second, Cosmic Cyclone is a very phenomenal card to help you deal with their board, just because it helps you answer so many key cards, right? So it helps you answer their Fire King Skyburn, which is their quick play destruction effect, and just being able to banish it means that they don't get the second additional effect of being able to protect their Fire King cards from being destroyed by card effects, which, I mean, it doesn't really come up too often, but you know, it does happen sometimes. And being able to get rid of Sanctuary is honestly pretty huge as well, just because in addition to getting rid of Sanctuary, that means they don't have any protection for their Fire King Islands, and more importantly, they cannot exceed summon during your turn, which means that their Garinix Exceed is basically out of the equation, and you can just continue to just play your game, you know? And then we have Super Polymerization. This deck is all fire, so if you have the room for Super Polymerization, a lot of times you can just end their board or just end their game by fusing away 2 fire monsters, whether it's like Arvada, Rangoli, or however you call the other level 4 that destroys or negates spells and traps, Garinix, Kirin, all that. And then the best part is, since it sends, it doesn't trigger the destruction effects, which means that nothing else triggers from their hand or their grave, which, like I said, depending on the situation, can straight up just end the game for them. And then you have Triple Tactics Talent. They will be activating a monster effect during your turn. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If it's the main phase and you're playing against Fire King, something will trigger at some point. So that means that Triple Tactics Talent is always going to be live. Now, it doesn't even matter, right? It could be the Fire King monsters. It could be an opponent's hand trap. Something will trigger. So as a result, you're going to be able to punish them by taking a big monster or just ripping away their hand to make sure that they can't like float into something else. So yeah. These cards really get in the matchup. And with that, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what deck you'd like to know how to beat next, as maybe I'll cover it. Who knows? But until then, see you guys next time. All right, take it easy.